Hello everyone, welcome to the session. Today we are going to discuss the Sociology Mains examination paper which was conducted yesterday. So if you have gone through that paper, you must agree that it is one of the easiest paper asked in the last few years of the Sociology Mains examination. And more or less answers were straightforward, and to a certain extent I could also say that they were not that tricky or comparatively a cakewalk. When you appear or when you write about them in a real time situation also, you will feel that paper was not that tricky or difficult at all. So again, let's do the basically discussion of all the questions in a very brief manner, so that we'll get a clarity on understanding related to various aspects which are being asked in the mains examination. We would also like to highlight that how these questions were directly from the class notes we have discussed, the booklets we have provided, and the test series we have been conducting. So as such, it was not a surprising paper. Most of the questions were on the expected lines and they were straightforward also. So let's begin with our first question. The first question says, discuss the nature of sociology, highlight its relationship with social anthropology. Now, when we discuss about the very first chapter of our basically sociology topic, again the second unit is all about the scope of sociology in comparison with other social sciences, in which we deliberately make a comparison from comparison of sociology with other social sciences, including philosophy, economics, anthropology, political science. And these days, one or two questions every year has been repeatedly asked from this chapter, because it gave them the basically scope of knowing from a candidate so many details about their basically insights related to sociology as well as their comparison with other social science. So when we discuss about it, if you see, this is of our booklet, you can verify that as basically well, and this is also asked in basically our test paper. Along with that, this is, you can say, more or less straightforward question. So if you have to discuss about what is the nature of sociology and highlight its relationship with social anthropology, our introduction will be highlighting about the sociology and its nature. So sociology is actually considered as a systematic study of society, in which they would try to understand social behavior, social relationship, and the social institution. Now it tries to cover the social anthropology aspect also, because of which it is sharing many goals with the social anthropology and its methods also, which is, you can say, borrowed from anthropology as well. But yet it is maintaining its distinction. That is why these two are two different disciplines. So we may start with our answer on sociology, that sociology is a systematic study of society, in which we will focus our attention on studying the relationship, studying the behavior, studying the various, you can say, aspects associated with the social order. Now, now we can have the basically brief idea about the sociology in the very introduction, that how it is going to study the social structure, it is going to study the macro as well as micro interaction happening within a society. It also discuss in detail about the diverse topics which is related to inequality, religion, education. Now, of late in the beginning, sociology have a kind of obsession toward the scientific study of society, which is leading to emergence of positivism and its domination in the early phase of sociology. But over a period of time, it also started focusing on the qualitative aspect as well as the non-positivistic aspect in its research basically methodology. So from there, it is going to have lot many influence from other social sciences. So again, there is also what we can see, that its relationship with social anthropology. So we can say that social anthropology share the behavior and the cultural study what it does within the branch of anthropology, including various methodology, including various basically way of conducting research. So when sociology prefer to go for quantitative method along with some tinge of qualitative method, again anthropology, in which social anthropology specifically focuses on qualitative aspect. And for having a qualitative aspect, they employ more basically likely ethnographic studies, the qualitative studies, the studies which is focusing on interviews, which is open ended, again the studies which also conducting some kind of observation, which is often participant. So we can say that yes, there are some interrelationship. Now when we discuss about various theories of sociology, it is directly byproduct of the use of methods and the approaches of social anthropology. For instance, Emile Durkheim used the study of the Herbert and Collins of Anunta tribe, in which he has borrowed the concept of totemism. Similarly, similar studies were also conducted by many sociologists relying on the anthropological perspective. For instance, the functionalism, which is one of the theoretical perspective in sociology, is actually inspired lot from the, you can say, work of Malinowski field study as well as his work on Trobriand Island. Similarly, Robert Redfield is one of the, you can say, inspiration for many of the sociologists who applied functionalism to study the tribal and the societies of the folk communities, right. So we can say lot of overlap. In fact, even in the case of theories, you will find that sociology and anthropology have lot of overlap when it comes to focus on studying the social forces influencing the individual behavior and individual forces basically trying to impact on the societal basically practices. We also have to bring some common basically scholars like Clifford Gates is one who is influenced, who is a social anthropologist, who is influenced a lot from the theories derived from the, you can say, sociological perspective of symbolic interactionism. So we can say that more and more, in order to understand a holistic perspective related to any social phenomenon, it is important nowadays that sociology and social anthropology both are trying to blend with each other and develop a interdisciplinary approach. So when we are going to write a conclusion of it, before writing conclusion, some kind of contemporary relevance that this interdisciplinary approach enhances the ability of both sociology and anthropology, and hence both basically sociology and social anthropology are going to benefit each other by merging their methodology, theoretical framework and their approaches to have a holistic and detailed understanding of a social phenomenon. So that way you can cover broader aspect of the discipline of sociology, as well as you can also establish its interlinkage with another discipline called as social anthropology. Now moving on to the new topic or new question, I would say, analyze the nature of caste as a status group. So this is question number 2 of the paper 1, in which they have borrowed the paper 2 topic of caste system, which is also covered in stratification and mobility chapter, where Weber, who is considered to promote the idea of a status group, in fact he has adopted this Trinitarian understanding of the, you can say, any social phenomenon, specifically the inequality and hierarchy. So he has followed this idea, in which he has given a perspective that how you will have the Trinitarian approach, in which Weber followed class, status and power, in which Weber believed that the most developed form of status group is actually a, you can say, a caste system or caste group. Now when we discuss about the caste system in general is referred in sociology as a hereditary endogamous occupational group of people, where one group of people are placed above the other in order to have higher privileges, higher basically you can say status, as well as higher you can say opportunities. Now this was so much embedded in the society of India that even today caste is refusing to get eradicated from the Indian society. So we can briefly write something on the topic of caste system and how change and continuity in the caste system is going to impact on it as a status group. So if I go back to the question again, read the question, analyze the changing nature of caste. Now when we discuss about changing nature of caste as a status group, once upon a time caste decide itself to be a status group. If you are from a particular caste, you get access to all the resources. If you are not from that caste, you are imposed with certain restriction or stigmas. In fact, when we were discussing on the Dr. Ambedkar point of view, he call that caste system result into social endosmosis, in which the more people are basically secluded, the more they are deprived of the, you can say, access to the benefit of the caste system. So, it is just like saying that when you are from a lower caste, you will have lesser social capital or lesser social contact through which you can use it for your higher development. Now, why there is a changing nature of caste as a status group is happening? So, there are many factors for it. One can say that it is due to the emergence of constitutionalism in Indian society. One can also say that the word of Yogendra Singh, who has write about law as indicator, initiator and integrator of change. So, law has been instrumental in ensuring the decline in influence of caste. Similarly, globalization, urbanization and all sorts of interaction with the world has resulted into people become more merit oriented and achievement oriented instead of birth oriented. Now, when we have to highlight that how effects of changing basically nature of caste as a status group is reflected, we can also bring out some of the sociologist perspective. So, M.N. Srinivas has also discussed about it, that how caste is not it used to be in his study of dominant class. So, in his study of dominant caste, in his study of Rampura, M.N. Srinivas says that dominant caste exercise more influence vis-a-vis a ritualistic higher caste. Andre Bete has also talked about in his Shripuram village that he has studied that in the Shripuram village, even the so-called ritualistic upper caste will have a horizontal division among each other. Similarly, Dipankar Gupta has given a detailed study of discrete hierarchy, discrete and modal hierarchy. So, in which he has talked about that caste is constantly changing and the earlier so-called ritualistic upper caste are no more enjoying the same status what they used to be. Now, many reasons, if you have to directly hit the bullseye and to write an answer, so we can simply say that this is due to more and more democratization of the education. So, when we talk about democratization of education, now education is no more a domain of Dvija caste, who are twice born caste group, who are basically having access to the education. It is now being basically expanded to each and every section of the society through universal education. Similarly, employment is detached from the caste. So, biggest reason for caste to be rigid was that your occupation is deriving from the birth, and that has now been liberated. So, M.N. Srinivas' concept of Sanskritization also illustrate about it, that how the lower caste community are going to have some kind of, you can say, claim for higher social status and got it with the process of Sanskritization. Similarly, one can also give credit to the policy of Government of India, where they have provided the benefits of reservation and affirmative action to the weaker section. Now, this no one can deny, no doubt is not very successful, but also it is one of the way out for providing some kind of relief to the historical injustice and marginalization faced by some of the communities. So, affirmative action through reservation in education, employment and politics have given some scope for higher social mobility to so-called marginalized community, altering their caste status, right. Similarly, we have urbanization. Now, urbanization is a process of population concentration in one place. When large number of people settle down, we call it urbanization. Now, when urbanization is there, the traditional caste group started migrating over there and give up on their traditional caste occupation, resulting into more different caste interaction and reduction in the caste-based rigidity and hierarchy. Likewise, one can also highlight the role of industrialization. So, role of industrialization is also playing a very important factor or role in the you can say merit based job recruitment instead of traditional birth based job recruitment. Globalization, bringing the consumerism is another factor we can highlight. Likewise, we can also give credit to, which we have already give a passing reference to, the legal and the constitutional intervention, how law abolishing untouchability and ending the caste-based occupation is one of the major factor for, you can say, upgradation of lower caste social status as well as changing the caste as a social status. Likewise, one can also say that with the rising population of youth challenging the traditional norms of caste superiority, there is also a sense of perception that caste was more basically hurdle rather than a liberator for the person who is belonging to particular caste. Similarly, there is also a good role played by the cinema and the movies. So, they are also going to have some basically perception development about the caste as basically responsible for many injustice or promoting intercaste unity also is also their credit. So, we can simply say that there are, you can say, many aspects which is happening in the society of India which are responsible for changing nature of caste as a status group. So, when we write a conclusion, we can simply say that caste system is changing its role and as a status group diminishing under the influence of socio-economic and political factors. So, what one of the sociologists has famously said that caste is like a chameleon. It changes its form and appearance as and when basically there is a requirement. So, one would be okay and ready to observe this change at a basically folded hand, and that is about the caste system. This is what covered in our basically class notes and the discussion. Next part of our discussion is the question 3rd of question 1, that is first C. Marriage as an institution has undergone a radical transformation from ritual to commercial in its outlook. Explain the factor behind this change. Now, marriage is defined as a, you can say, universal bond which is serving as a institution also. So, you can say marriage is a universal institution that accord social legitimacy to mating relationship and subsequent children. Now, marriage in India for centuries considered as a sacred institution. Why sacred? Because in Indian basically culture, it is believed that marriage is, again you will have the bond for many lives and it is an unbreakable bond. So, it is not something which is going to be considered as the bond for the life, but for many life, and it is also, you can say, considered to have no provision of divorce among the marriages in India. So, that is what one of the reason of its sacredness, and it is also a sacrament. So, among the majority community in India following Hinduism, there are total 16 sanskaras. One of the sanskaras is the marriage sanskar, and that is one of the sacrament. So, sacrament make it more a, you can say, sacred institution with unbreakable bonding. However, with the change in the society, with the change in the, you can say, socio-economic order and globalization, marriages are being transformed into expression of a kind of, you can say, contractual nature. So, as the question says, we would like to repeat that same point, that it is becoming more and more commercial in its outlook. How? So, globalization has a great role to play. When people look at the cultures of other society, they found that in their society, becoming a partner through marriage is as easy as getting separated from each other through divorce, and they find this kind of, you can say, arrangement more conducive for fulfillment of their need, because there is a basically marriages from a community focused celebration to a, you can say, individual centric affair, which is primarily one of the reason for the, you can say, marriages to be transformed from ritual to the commercial outlook. One can also say that various sociologists have also highlighted the role of globalization, specifically the British sociologist Anthony Giddens, who consider globalization reshaped personal identity and the relationship, setting new expectation for the marriage, which is very difficult to fulfill. Another factor one cannot deny is the basically extravagant weddings which are used to be conducted by the families to display their economic and the social status, which is creating it as a impression of a commercial outlook. Likewise, you will have the modern values which are now more celebrating the personal desire and achievement, driving the couple to opt for grand wedding as a self-expression. Also, we can say that there is a concept of liquid love which we have to add into that suggests that relationship in a liquid society mirror the market behavior, emphasizing the commodification. So, more and more ritual element is being transformed into commercial, and it is also highlighting the increasing rate of divorces in the society also. Because of the same reason, one cannot deny that divorce rate is rising. There is also rise in the intercaste marriages. Also, instances of interfaith marriages cannot be denied. Likewise, there is a same-sex marriages also rising, or homosexual marriages. Likewise, we can also see live-in relationship. So, these factors can also be given as a passing reference in the answer to highlight that how the relationship which was more sacred is now under the influence of commercialization, and it is just like a brokeable bond. So, just like a shopkeeper and a buyer has a relationship, as long as they are in good terms, they have a exchange of goods and services. If they are having bad terms, they change their basically buyer or seller, vice versa. Same thing, commercialization of marriage is also analyzed through this basically perspective. In fact, various sociologists have highlighted that it is a reflection of transformation of society, and that transformation of society is driven by the individualism and the consumerism, which is changing the overall, you can say, perspective associated with marriage. Right. Next. Democracy needs a vibrant culture of civil society in order to strengthen its foundation of citizenship. Comment. So, when we talk about democracy, as expected, again democracy should be defined first as a rule of the people, for the people, by the people. Demo itself is a word which is derived from Greek letter, the Greek word that is people. Crazy matlab rule. So, democracy needs a vibrant culture of civil society in order to strengthen its foundation of citizenship and comment. So, for instance, the meaning of that is, you can simply say that how democracy and civil society has to go hand in hand together. So, one can say that civil society is what? A civil society is a society which is working as a watchdog for rights of a citizen, and it is playing a very crucial role for the strengthening of democracy. In fact, many sociologists, including the critical sociologists like Habermas, has also highlighted and underscored the importance of active citizen civil society in fostering the fundamental values necessary for the healthy democracy. Now, how civil society help in it? So, civil society bridges the gap. So, if I may say, civil society does what? It bridges the gap between the citizens and the state, encouraging citizens to participate in the political process to express themselves. Civil society also act as an amplifier of the voice. So, when we talk about civil society, it will act as an amplifier of the voice of voiceless. That is another factor. Similarly, you will have the public sphere, which is what dominated by the, you can say, civil society, and they have a great role to play to make the citizenship more aware and informed. So, awareness generation and information is also going to help the citizen to make a fair decision. Likewise, one cannot deny that civil society played a great role in the social capital by bringing people together, forming a social capital as per Robert Putnam. Likewise, it will also play a very great role, civil society, in acting as a watchdog, as we have highlighted. It will keep a watch on the government and the other activities and keep on getting the people and the citizen alert. Similarly, it is also sometimes challenging the social inequality. However, the civil society sometimes itself hijacked by the dominant class. So, one cannot say that civil society is a panacea or solution, but definitely it is going to have a greater role in, you can say, raising the voice for the voiceless and protecting them from undue pressure created by the state. So, a robust civil society significantly enhances the vitality of democracy, and it play a vital role, one can say, in the you can say, strengthening of the citizenship. So, there are two kinds of citizenship, simply saying that one citizenship is passive citizenship, which we need not to highlight here, but just for information I am mentioning it. Active citizenship is another one. Now, passive citizenship generally is getting alert or activated during the time of election. So, if every 5 years you go to the election booth and cast your vote, you believe that you have exercised your right of citizenship. Yes, it is true, but it is making you passive citizen. An active citizen is constantly participating in day-to-day activities of the governance and present their own opinion on basically improvement of those. For instance, if you see a child labor and if you are not doing anything, even not complaining in the helpline number, rather than basically you can say, rather than you can directly confronting the person, you do have the right that you can directly call the helpline to take care of the basically matter, but usually we don't. So, that is an example or indication of what we called as the passive citizenship. On the other hand, active citizenry will go for such kind of thing. Similarly, there is a complaint booth for all the basically you can say complaint you can make for non-collection of garbage from the houses, but rarely we will use it. Similarly, there is always a feedback form given in the railway coaches for the passengers to suggest, but rarely, very often people have used it. But now through social media we started using it, but that is what we can say is the strengthening the foundation of democracy, which will require a vibrant culture of a civil society. What are the basic and the irreducible functions of the family as proposed by Talcott-Parson? Explain. Now, very straightforward question. Talcott-Parson talked about two major functions, that is socialization of children and the you can say maintenance of adult personality. So, we have reached to the last question for the compulsory one, in which Parson talked about the you can say two irreducible function of the civil society for the family, and these two irreducible function are, one of the function which is a straightforward one is given in the you can say his context, that is socialization of children. And second is your you can say maintenance of adult personality. Now, socialization of the children, indicating that children need a socialization on a regular basis through which they can be make as a important civilized citizen of the society. Now, if you are not going to have a socialization, you will not learn what is acceptable and unacceptable behavior in the society. So, socialization of a children from the functional point of view is one of the important factor. How you will basically raise your child, how will incorporate value consensus, and how will you ensure cooperation with competition, and these things will help in basically society to remain stable. So, that is a primary rule, that is primary socialization related to teachings of a children is to be done by the society. Second is maintenance of adult personality. So, when we talk about adult personality, here we can talk about the you can say transmission of the you can say culture and any time of anxiety and anxiety control and pattern maintenance. Now, what does it mean, anxiety control and pattern maintenance? So, you have the basically theory called as warm bath theory of the family that provide a emotional support whenever stress is there. So, whenever we are in stress, instead of basically talking to our colleagues, we prefer to talk to our family. And why we prefer to talk to our family? Because there we will get a emotional support. Or emotional stability that help in mitigating the stress and keeping the system in equilibrium. So, emotional security is also provided by that. Along with that, apart from these two major function of the family, we can also say that you can say irreducible function given by person in the form of family is also given some other aspects like providing the sexual regulation by arranging a marriages. Similarly, they will also have a control over the reproduction. So, reproduction function is also performed by the family, which will ensure that the children are going to be the citizens or they will provide the new member of the society, right. So, we can highlight that point also, but these are the two major functions. However, this viewpoint you can briefly write in criticism of this viewpoint of Parson, the critique of feminist. Feminists highlighted that Parson has given the two roles for the women. And what are the two roles? These two roles include, first role is that women are going to have not the instrumental actions, rather they are going to have expressive action, which are emotional role. And because they are good at emotional expressive role, they are supposed to be a homemaker. So, feminists have criticized this, that how you can consider us at basically playing the role of a homemaker. Likewise, we have also you can say is having a say in the affairs. So, Marxists have said that family is one of the reason to irreducible function of functionalist. Parson has been criticized by Marxists that family act as a cushion to you can say convince a person for the exploitation to continue. So, they are the hurdle in the you can say path of revolution. So, that we can always highlight. Next question we can move on. Sociology is the product of European Enlightenment and Renaissance. Critically examine this statement. So, again we will come to the basics, which is the first chapter, that is the modernity and social change and emergence of sociology. In this topic, we have discussed in detail about Renaissance. We also discuss in detail about the you can say Enlightenment, and both this Renaissance and Enlightenment. So, Renaissance begins from Italy post annexation of you can say Constantinople by the Ottoman Empire, and again many of the artists, many of the intellectuals, many of the poets, many of the painters, many of the sculpturists, many of the philosophers have migrated toward the Italy, which was a prosperous region of Europe and you can say hub of all trade. So, they find lot many rich business person who are patronizing, and when they started expressing their artistic expression, the Italians and the European in general realize that it is a revisiting or rebirth of Greco-Roman history, when there were architectures, there were poetries, there were history writing, there were sculpting, there were also philosophy writing and other things were there. So, this was considered as rebirth, which has triggered a thought that earlier civilization were you can say greater and they were encouraging the free thinking. Second thing was that after the decline of Renaissance, of course, in the 16th, 17th century around, there were beginning of the Enlightenment from France. Now, Enlightenment begins with age of reason, in which there was a question raised by the people toward anything and everything which is not in you can say standing on the ground of reason or logic. So, this European Enlightenment and Renaissance has emphasized on the empirical you can say approach, or you can simply say the approach which is going to be based on reason. So, one can say all this has created, like Renaissance is associated with commercial revolution and scientific revolution. Enlightenment on the other hand is associated with French and industrial revolution. Both these Enlightenment and Renaissance has created trouble, chaos, disorder and some kind of anxiety among the people, which makes them unable to understand what is happening. And because of that reason, many of the scholars come forward and realize that there is a need for a discipline which can study systematically the society and find out why this disorder is happening and give us remedies. So, in this background, Auguste Comte as a French philosopher come forward and provided the positivism in his book System of Positive Philosophy, and he was the one who coined the term sociology. So, we will believe that sociology as a term emerged from the you can say sociology as a term emerged from the Renaissance. And enlightenment, which has created some kind of trouble in basically society, which makes people more anxious to question the existing social order and how to fix it by studying it from a systematic perspective. So, this is how we can write an answer to this. So, again you will have the, you can say, snapshot where you can see what are the questions has been asked, commercial revolution during the Renaissance period and the basically enlightenment in detail also being covered. Next question, do you think objectivity is an overhyped idea in sociological research? Discuss the merit and demerit of non-positivist method. So, when we talked about objectivity, objectivity is a empirically verified observation in which a researcher is not driven by his or her personal belief. That is what we considered as objectivity. Now, the question says that do you think objectivity is an overhyped idea in sociological research? Now, when we talked about objectivity as an overhyped idea, who has overhyped it is none other than the early sociologists who were referred as positivists. Now, positivists were having a soft corner for making sociology as a science of society. And for objectivity, they have a very soft corner, because without having an emphasis on objectivity, science of society cannot be created. So, be it Auguste Comte or Emile Durkheim or basically any other sociologist who was on the early period, they were overemphasizing on use of objectivity in the sociological research to highlight various social phenomena in a same manner like a natural science highlight a natural phenomenon. Now, objectivity is going to have more or less ignore the sense of, you can say, subjectivity within the social science. So, the traditional basically or I would say early sociologists wanted that any social phenomenon can be studied in a same manner like the way science study a natural phenomenon. So, objectivity is what considered as a panacea in the early period of the social life, right. So, we talked about Auguste Comte. Auguste Comte talked about the use of science and scientific method, considering it as an objective. Emile Durkheim talked about social fact, who is also believer that social facts are things only, and that is why science and scientific method can be easily applied. But when they start applying in the early phase itself, in the basically first phase of sociology itself, it was observed that the, you can say, complete objectivity is illusion, as Gunnar Myrdal has also highlighted later, and sociology is a social science. Sociology is not a natural science. So, objectivity needed to be refined at par with the requirement of the subject matter. So, here comes Weber, who have refined this idea, saying that complete objectivity could not be possible, but maximum we could do is that incorporation of some kind of the, you can say, value neutrality. When a researcher has to detach himself or herself from the research subject, that is how they will maintain the value neutrality. And Max Weber has actually liberated the sociology with the obsession of positivism and objectivity, and he says that we need to not blindly imitate the positivism method, rather we have to focus on the new methods, like he has created Worstian method, he has created ideal type method, he has created causal pluralism method, and many other ways to make the essence of science to be applied on social reality to study it in detail, right. So, having said that, we can move on to the next question, that is merit and demerit of the non-positivist method. So, when we talk about merit and demerit of the non-positivist method, we can simply say that positivist method has many merits. One of the merit of the, I am missing out, merit and demerit of non-positivist method. So, non-positivist method has many merits. So, what are that? So, one of the merit of non-positivism is that it can allow us to understand motivation and values behind any action. Another merit of non-positivism is that it provides a deeper understanding of complex social phenomena. So, you can go into depth then there is, you can say, flexibility in the research method when we talked about or when we discuss about ethnography and the phenomenology. So, it gave another merit is flexibility in the research method. Which method you would like to use? It can be provided. Likewise, one can also say that it is going to take into consideration many of the, you can say, element of subjectivity and individual perception is considered. Individual is not ignored simply. However, demerit is that it is difficult in formulation of theory, difficulty in theory building. Due to subjectivity. Yes, it is possible to make a theory, but again due to subjectivity incorporation, there are chances that it is bringing some kind of difficulty in affecting the basically repetition of data. Similarly, it is highly, you can say, ambiguous or difficulty in generalizing. So, phenomenology says there should be no theory in the field of sociology, and they would like to bring sociology close to the, you can say, philosophy or speculation or literature. Similarly, qualitative research or in non-positivist method, it is comparatively time consuming and often cost intensive. Often many people say they are vague and ambiguous, which is also one of the criticism they have to highlight, right. Similarly, various basically other criticism are basically there, but in the end we can say that non-positivism has given a new leash of life to the field of sociology, which got monotonous, or you can say suffering from bankruptcy related to the failure of complete objectivity within a social science. So, if I may highlight with an example, one can say that positivism says everything is fixed. So, just like when you put a you can say fuel in a car, it should basically function if it is in good condition. If it is not in good condition, it will be malfunction, but it must function. There should be no if and but on that. So, if there are particular humidity, particular temperature and pressure, there should be followed by some kind of convectional or any other form of rainfall. So, that is something which is very certain, it is not something if and but. So, science and positivism are emphasizing on objectivity which focuses on certainty. However, in society, when we do an action, we have multiple reasons. So, a person visiting a particular occasion of National Day may have multiple reasons to attend it. A person going to market may have multiple reasons to basically go to visit a market. He might be a buyer, he might be just a, you can say, analyzer to understand the demand and supply of vegetable. He might be a farmer who want to see which vegetable is more sold so that he can bring it tomorrow, and he could be a police person who is taking care of the security of the market. He could be a shopkeeper who has a shop inside that. So, there are multiple reasons for a person going to visit a market, and that is not addressed by the complete objectivity. So, that is what brought into sociology by the non-positivists, the subjective understanding of any reality, and that is going to enrich the sociology from its basically infancy to its maturity. So, that is what we can write. Next question is about our what is the social mobility? Critically examine the classification of closed and the open model of social stratification, right? So again, one can say that social mobility is a concept in which a person or a group belonging to one social strata is allowed to change it by having an upward mobility or downward mobility. So social mobility is a sociological concept which simply refer to the individual or group moving within a society in a particular hierarchy. Now it indicates the flexibility and also openness of a social structure as explored by the various sociologists including Prithrim Sorokin, right? Now when we highlight about the examination of classification of closed and open model of social stratification. So closed model, as per you can say the bottom has been 3, which is closed in nature. One is caste system, one is estate system, and other is you can say the slavery system. However, open model is considered to be class system, right? So that we can simply highlight on that part. Now when we talked about any kind of you can say these system, that is something which is associated with open and closed system. Now we can highlight on that in detail in our answer to get the you can say exact closure to that particular question. So this is what also being discussed in the material, and that is what mentioned. Now how do you view and access the increasing trend of digital ethnography and use of visual culture in sociological research? Now when we talked about a concept called as ethnography, ethnography is actually a detailed and in-depth study of a particular social phenomenon. In most of the cases, a researcher go to study that social phenomenon by following the participant observation. So here a researcher is going into depth and highlighted the various you can say features of that particular you can say social phenomenon. It could be society, it could be custom, it could be a tradition. Now it is something which is ethnography, which is described as production of highly detailed account of how people in a particular social setting lives their life based upon their systematic and long term observation and conversation with the informant. Now it is mostly associated with you can say participant observation along with many other theory. How do you view and access the increasing trend of digital ethnography and use of visual culture in sociological research? Nowadays, with the rise of digital media and social media platforms, various detailed study of various indigenous group are available on YouTube. Just log on to the YouTube and you will find some traveler has visiting to some isolated and you can say shy kind of tribal community living in Africa or India or for that matter China or for that matter Australia. Now this is a great detailed documentary they have basically produced and made it available free of cost for everyone. And these kinds of you can say increasing trend of detailed study of a particular indigenous or any basically societal group is what we can simply considered under the digital ethnography. Now use of visual culture in sociological research is also about that. Now again, when we have to basically highlight how it is used visual culture in sociological research, so in many cases it is being used. We can simply consider it as a new form of analysis of the content also with the help of digital you can say ethnography. So let's take an example that because of the technological advancement, you have various ways to get access about the digital detail of some of the group. Now this approach you can say ensure that online platform capturing the nuances of the social interaction in the digital space and someone will study it. Now it is not just extension to redefine the fieldwork that reflect the fluidity of the virtual world, but also it is enriching a use of more and more technology to basically cater to the need of subject matter. Now we have to basically view. The question says how do you view it? So naturally when we have to view it, we can consider it as a positive transformation where various you can say technology are used to facilitate the work. Now, it incorporates the visual media to probe the deeper into social basically norms, values and ideology, and you can see that in journalism also. So, first point, associated with merit of it. So, merit is that it is very non-intrusive, unlike ethnography, it is very non-intrusive way of conducting research, and comparatively one can not deny that it is easily accessible. Third is, compared to ethnography, it is flexible and cheaper with low cost, and also it is going to have low time consumption. Right? Now, these methodology actually facilitate the immediate data gathering and the analysis for the ideal social phenomenon could be there. However, इसी के demerits हम बता सकते हैं. Demerits is that often in the name of, you can say, the more and more inclusivity to get the detail about the data, we are compromising on the privacy of the group who is basically collected in ethnographic document. Often it is influenced from some kind of biasness, because every documentary is prepared with certain perspective and often it highlights those things which is over highlighted by them. In general, we do not highlight that, right? Similarly, there is chance that in this basically, you can say, critical ethnography, there is more element of recreation, element of reconstruction of something rather than reality. So, these are some of the aspects we can basically highlight. So, conclusion could be that integrating any kind of digital ethnography and visual culture into the sociological research is going to significantly improve the manner in which we conduct the, you can say, research in the field of sociology. Now, this is what a book note also talked about. Describe the main idea of Max Weber book, The Protestant Ethics and Spirit of Capitalism, as a critique of Marxism. Now, it is a book which is considered as a watershed moment in the field of sociology and a landmark source for understanding how Weber applied his approach to conduct a research and conclude it in the form of theory. So, Weber theory talked about how the capitalism in Europe developed from the Protestant ethics. We make a acronym for it, that is Viper for capitalism and the Dinoset for the Protestant ethics. So, when we talk about the Protestant ethics, Weber says Protestant ethics has eradicated the dilemma in the mind of the people related to the, you can say, destination of a person. So, every person has been following, I am just giving you a brief of that, every person has already got the doctrine of predestination. So, when we talked about doctrine of predestination, again Weber says in Protestant ethics everyone got the clarity that they are already destined and there is no need to panic to search for the grace of God, because God has already noted down or mentioned their grace and we cannot change it. So, destiny is already predestined, right, written. Then image of God. So, God or image of God in other religion is created differently than Protestantism. In Protestantism, God will be happy when they saw success of a basically creation, which is human being, and that is only possible with hard work. Then notion of calling. Protestant always encourage people to identify what they are God gifted with in terms of talent or ability, which basically they can do much easily when other people struggle to do so. So any kind of calling or any kind of vocation or any kind of thing which they can do with ease and with an expertise, so that need to identify and work upon. So notion of calling for Virat Kohli could be cricket, notion of calling for Dr. Kalam could be science, and like that they have make a name for themselves by identifying that. So that is something which is what Protestantism is saying. Then all work is sacred and no work is inferior or superior is what Protestantism believe, right? And this worldly asceticism is talked about Protestantism. So Protestantism talked about that there should be an asceticism which is living like a monk, living like a sage, living like a person who is in simple living and high thinking mode. So these are the ideal type created by Weber, which is aligned with his ideal type of capitalism, which is Viper. So Viper stands for wealth creation, Viper stands for individualism, capitalism also stands for profit, capitalism also is going to have some kind of ethics, and likewise it talked about rationality. So that way Weber has created an ideal type of both and join them with an elective affinity. Now the question is not about Weber theory of Protestant ethics and spirit of capitalism, which make you end up writing anything and everything related to this theory. Rather, Weber theory is primarily here related to in critique of Marxism. We have to highlight that how this theory offer a critique of Marxism. So how this Weberian theory is a critique or counter to the Marxist idea is the main essence of the answer, which we should not digress from. Hold on for a second. So again, simply saying, we can say that what Marx was talking about related to capitalism. So Marx call capitalism as an evil system of, you can say, bourgeois who are exploiting the proletariat, which will lead to cause of, you can say, the alienation. And Marx considered religion as opium of masses. So religion is considered by Marx in a very negative light, which is supporting the exploitation of bourgeois. So bourgeois are going to get the support from the religion, and that is going to create a false consciousness. However, Weber point of view is highlighting one thing, that is religion is not playing any negative role, rather religion is playing a positive role in the rise of capitalism, and that is one of the criticism of Marx. Similarly, Marx has said that there is some kind of material conditions which are responsible for the rise of capitalism. However, Weber has critique or offer a critique with his theory that there is a multi-causality, because Weber clearly mentioned that only religion is going to provide the spirit, the infrastructure or the material is needed. So again, that is come from the region. So that is highlighted by Weber. Similarly, Weber analysis also underline the role of cultural values. For example, in his study of religion, Weber has talked about Buddhism. Weber has talked about Hinduism, which he says is believed into karma, dharma and punarjanma. Buddhism as desire to basically desire as a root of all evil. So these are something which is creating a local reason for not rising capitalism, and not the, you can say, religion is a hurdle or supporter in the case of, you can say, capitalism. So to a certain extent, one can say that Marx was very radically opposed to the idea of religion as well as capitalism. However, Weber as a sociologist preferred to study it by applying the methodology of non-positivism and concluded it that often there are some input behind capitalism rise from the religion, and that religion in Europe was Protestantism. So that is something which is what we have to highlight. Next, critically explain the salient feature of alienation. So alienation के salient feature as such Marx has given into detail. So alienation is defined by Marx as a, you can say, estrangement or separation of a person from 4 aspects of production, that is product of production, production environment, fellow workers, and also the self or species being. Now Marx says that in modern capitalism, doing the same monotonous work on daily basis resulted into the person getting monotonous and bored and feeling alienated or cut off. Now this is going to be felt by everyone in future. So worker in a capitalist society, despite they are working to the best of their capability, feel that their creativity is not, you can say, respected, and their, you can say, work is becoming monotonous. So alienation is from the product. So worker in the capitalist system are not having any sense of ownership from their product. Similarly, a worker is going to have the production environment becoming alien. Matlab, the process of production is becoming mechanized and it is very difficult to pursue it with the help of your own, you can say, decision making. Everything is fixed. So you are just acting as a cog in the wheel rather than doing any change. Likewise, one can say that production is also becoming productive when there is a happiness among the worker, when they joke around, gossip around, talk around with each other. But there is, in modern times, everyone is fixed in their cubicle, or their workload is so much that they don't get a time to communicate with others. This is causing alienation. And lastly, after this, people started questioning themselves that who I am working for, what is the purpose of me to work, and that is caused them to suffer from what we call as alienation from self. Now, when we have to critically explain this salient feature of alienation propounded by Karl Marx, we can say that Goldthorpe has talked about it and said that all these things what Marx is saying in terms of alienation is already known to the people when they join the work. So it is not something which is shocking or new to them. So people compensate for their losses to the higher salary. Similarly, C.W. Mills talked about white collar worker, saying that it is not just laborers but the white collar worker, those who are engaged into service and hospitality sector, are also facing the alienation. Then there is also the Melvin Seaman, who has talked about the meaninglessness normlessness and your basically psychological impact on a person. So alienation is not something which is basically faced by the laborers, but a psychological phenomenon faced by everyone in their life. Right? So that is one. Then there is basically Robert Blauner, who wrote a book called as Alienation and Freedom, in which he said that in some places where creativity is respected, alienation is lesser. In some places where creativity is not respected, alienation is high. For instance, he has given an example that in your printing press, where a person has a more freedom to decide what color the newspaper is going to have, what kind of news it is going to have. So in this, alienation is lesser vis-a-vis automation industry, where alienation is higher, because design is not made by them, color is not made by them. So this is something which is what causing basically alienation. So alienation is a matter of degree, is what they were trying to convey. Moving on to the next question, which is question 4. Question 4 talked about what do you understand by mixed method? Discuss its strength and limitation. So mixed method may be for many considered as new question, but as such there is no new question as such. Why? Because mixed method is nothing but a triangulation, or you can say combination of quantitative and qualitative method. Now, triangulation is introduced in the scope of sociology or field of sociology by Norman Denzin, who has talked about that quantitative and qualitative method have their own set of pros and cons. Quantitative and qualitative method has their own set of, you can say, positive and negative. So, if we combine them, it is something which is going to bring some kind of, you can say, benefit or advantage over both this method, called as mixed method or triangulation. Now, when we discuss about the triangulation, we have talked about Norman Denzin and talked about 4 types of triangulation, which include combination of quantitative and qualitative data leading to the data triangulation. Then we talked about investigator triangulation, in which multiple researchers following the quantitative and qualitative approach are combined together. Similarly, the theory triangulation, where we combine the theory, and lastly the method triangulation or methodology triangulation. So, these are the 4 types of triangulation. Now, highlight the strength and limit of it. So, we have already got that strength and limit, which is highlighted by the, you can say, various scholars. So, strength of triangulation is first that it is going to utilize the best of both quantitative and qualitative method, right. So, first thing is that whatever limitation or you can say advantages were there, both are combined to achieve the strength and weakness of both, and we can say that is a better way to conduct a research. Similarly, by providing both method together, we can have also generalization with in-depth study. Generalization is to be there with in-depth study. Similarly, we can also have this method that is going to enable us to basically enhance both reliability and validity. So, reliability and validity is going to have more increase under that, which is following, right. Then we have the enhance, you can say, insight into our research. देखो, first theory quantitative method is good for theory building, and the other theory is good for, you can say, collecting the insight about a particular theory. So, you can say that here we can combine deductive and inductive together and to create a, you can say, theoretical outcome. So, one can say that here numerical data can be linked with real world experiences and narrative. So, what I was trying to convey is that it will enhance the insight related to the research. Lastly, we can also say the benefit is that it will create dynamism and versatility toward the research. So, however, the criticism of that is, the criticism limitation is that one of the limitation related to triangulation is that often by saying triangulation we try to oversimplify the thing. So, it is a oversimplified version, it may not give the benefit of both. Similarly, often it is going to have more cost intensive because multiple things are put together. Time consuming is also one of the limitation. One can also highlight that it is a challenge, which is methodological challenge to complete this on time by applying both this inconsistent method together. Often it creates a situation of epistemological, you can say, inconsistency. So, epistemological inconsistency causes some kind of tension. What is epistemological inconsistency? So, when there is a source of knowledge and its validity to be explored, quantitative has a different orientation, qualitative has a different orientation. So that is also one of the question we have to write in our answer, right? So hopefully you get a basic idea that mixed method or qualitative and quantitative method combined or triangulation stand out as a robust approach in social science to adapt to the different complicated reality, right? Now next question is about gig economy. We have already discussed in detail about that gig economy. So here there is a concept of gig economy and discuss its impact on labor market and worker social security net. So what do you mean by gig economy? So as per World Economic Forum, gig economy is defined by its focus on the workplace participation and income generation via gigs or single project or task for which the worker is hired. So that is something which is already discussed by us in detail. So here we can simply mention that what do you mean by the term gig? So the term gig is actually referred to most of the project which are freelance based project which are done via a platform. So simply saying, if you are associated with Uber, Ola or Flipkart, Amazon and all, they are considered as gig. So these gig economy are actually characterized by the freelance and the flexible job opportunities where you will be having some kind of platform based work that is affecting the marketing, job security and social benefit for the worker. Now this shift toward the more precarious employment form has significantly have an implication for the social security system and the worker well-being with the sociologists like various other has highlighted on this. Now if we have to highlight this, it is a short-term flexible job and we have already given in detail independent worker paid by the gig, consumer who need a specific services, for example a ride to their next destination are actually delivered, and companies that connect with the worker to consumer in direct manner including a app based technological platform. So we have discussed in detail about it and the question demands us that define the concept of gig economy and discuss its impact on labor market and worker social security net. Everything is covered. So according to FICCI or Ernst & Young and NESCOM joint report future of job, 24% share is going to be from the gig economy. Key drivers here, challenges here, no clear employment relationship is there. Again, no employment stability and heavy workload, lack of grievance redressal mechanism, not easy to be labeled as employee by the government and low payment wages. So these are some of the factors we can highlight. Now critically assess next question, the impact of technological advancement and automation on the nature of work. So when we talked about the impact of technological advancement and the nature of work, again one can say that here advancement and nature of work will be affected by the, you can say, technological advancement, and classic example of that is your Fordism and Taylorism. We can briefly write on Daniel Bell post-industrial society. And we can basically focus on other basically aspects as well, right? Let's understand that how technology is going to impact on the, I'll read the question again, impact of technology and technological advancement and automation on the nature of work and employment. So Fordism is what? So it is a, you can say, application of Henry Ford model who has transformed the production process. And when he transformed the production process, how he did so? So he did so by dividing a work into many parts and subparts, and each part basically have a interlinked with other part. So in a way, Fordism may, if there is a work, suppose this is a work, it is divided into many small parts and subparts. We can simply understand with a pin factory example we have discussed in our optional classes as well, where a pin is made by one person in basically 10 in number per day, but 20 number rather per day. Now what the company did, as per the, you can say, ideas from the economist, what this company did, company has actually divided the work of this pin factory into, you can say, various steps, and now a person has to do one step on daily basis, other person has to do another step, third person has to do another step, fourth, fifth and sixth has to do their own step. So what happened that once a 10 employees were there and they were making entire pin all together by them. So each employee make 20 pins each. So making the entire production as 200 pins per day. However, what happened when this is divided? So the 10 worker remain the 10 only, and they are dividing into the work into 18 steps. So first worker has to do one step, second worker has to do one step, and rest of the all workers has to do 2 steps in the pin factory. And what happened after that? The entire pin manufacturing has gone into basically multiple times, and 48,000 pins were manufactured per day. So when I am saying 48,000 pins, if you divide it by 200, it is going to be simple 243 times rice. And now when there is a more production, what will happen? There will be more, you can say, supply in market, less in the price. Price will decline, but the each worker is going to have more to basically share as a wage. Why? Because the wage rate will also going to rise, right? So this is what going to happen in the Fordism also. Same thing, Henry Ford has introduced that instead of worker has to move from one place to another, he has introduced the concept of conveyor belt and automation, in which workers stand at one place, keep on doing the work whole day and return back home. Now what happened with this automation, what happened with introduction of technology like that, it make the worker part producer. He is not complete producer anymore. It will also make person more suffer from alienation, and it is also making a person losing out any specialization what they have. And as Marx was emphasizing, the dead labor, which he called as capital or money or technology, is going to be superior than the living labor. So these are the outcome associated with Fordism. Now what is Taylorism? So Frederick Taylor have introduced this, you can say, Taylorism, which is also referred as scientific management. So what is scientific management? So Frederick Taylor has highlighted that if we meticulously design the work of a person done by him or her whole day, again we can save a lot of their energy and increase their production. So he has given a detailed instruction that how much travel or how much distance a person has to walk, again how much water they have to intake, how much tea break they can have, and overall productivity of work has been basically promoted. So this scientific management looks cool from outside, but again when you follow it, what happen is it make a person feel like cog in a wheel. It make a person feel like a mechanized labor instead of a free thinking labor. It make them suffer from, of course, alienation because of too much of interference. And similar idea is forwarded by, you can say, the Daniel Bell also, that post-industrial society may be a society of information, and this will basically going to have more critical aspects associated with the social order. So this is something which is what we can write in terms of our basically description about the, you can say, technological advancement and the, you can say, automation. So information society ban jayegi. Now what we have to write in, you can say, the analysis part after giving brief introduction associated with that, that how it is going to create a problem, what problem it will going to create. So this is definitely going to create a problem of, already we have talked about, is alienation. Just give me a moment. So, what problem we can have in terms of facing this? So, problem we can have in this, that advancement in technology allowed for more, you can say, production, as we were discussing also, increase production, increase efficiency. Also, it will increase the, you can say, one can say the wages, because sale is higher. Another benefit is that it will create more employment opportunity. So, job opportunity might rise for those who are skilled or those who know about the automation and other technologies. Similarly, it will have more and more positive impact on the nature of work, or you can say production environment. However, the limitation or negative aspect is going to be that it will be considered as interference in the work process. Similarly, it will create more surveillances on the worker. Similarly, this is also going to create a, you can say, sense of monotony and frustration, so alienation. It is also going to give scope for gig economy, rise in gig economy. Again, it is also going to highlight the increased risk of declining labor production. So, decline in labor dependency in production. And all that happened through this, right? So, these are some of the critical aspects. Now, next question is describing the various characteristics of social fact. How is rate of suicide a social fact according to Durkheim? So, simply we have made an acronym, that is social fact is considered as independent, social fact is considered as the constraint in character, social fact have generalization, and social fact is external to an individual. So, these are the four characteristics of social fact. And how is the rate of suicide according to Durkheim a social fact? Because it follows all the four characteristics which we have discussed in detail. The social fact as a way of collective way of thinking, feeling and acting, which are external to an individual but have a coercive, by reason of which they are control of him. So, that is what we can say is the reason Durkheim consider social facts of suicide rate is a, you can say, thing or social fact, right. So, that is something which is a very straightforward kind of question, that the concept of social fact as per Emile Durkheim is to have the, you can say, providing a subject matter to the sociology. So, as per Durkheim, if you ask him what is the subject matter of sociology, so he will say social fact. And we have discussed in classroom in detail about the social fact, which is a collective way of thinking, feeling and acting, which are external to individual and impose constraint on them, right. So, how suicide rate is a social fact? So, for having social fact, Durkheim has given 4 tests. It must be independent, it must be constrained in character, it must be having a externality, and it must be a kind of generalization. So, these 4 characteristics are clearly observed in suicide rate, which is driven by suicidogenic current. So, we have learned in detail about the study of social fact done by Durkheim in a way which we called as code. Code is standing for classification of social fact, observation of social fact, again you have the distinction of social fact and explanation of social fact. So, while doing all that, Emile Durkheim found that social fact of suicide rate has been driven by high regulation, high integration, low integration and low regulation. Now, high regulation is all about, you can say, fatalistic suicide, altruistic. Low integration is all about our, you can say, anomic suicide and egoist suicide. So, all these four types of suicide is described by Emile Durkheim, and these four types of suicide has independence, existence, constraint in character, external in nature and generalization. Based on the 26,000 cases studied by Durkheim from 1841 to 1870s, he has observed that these suicide rates are actually more objective and truly a kind of social facts. So, this is what we can write. Moving on to the next question is about G.H. Mead. So, explain G.H. Mead idea of development of self through generalized other. So, G.H. Mead is one of the sociologists who has introduced in the world of sociology the symbolic interactionism. In his theory, G.H. Mead has given a psycho-socio analysis of how development of self occur. So, simply we can write in what we have already discussed that idea of development of self start with imitation stage या preparatory stage. In the preparatory stage, a child is involved in having a meaningless, you can say, gestures, sounds and grimace attached by basically that child. Then in the play stage socialization, what happen is child used to appreciate and copy the significant other or discrete other. And then there is a game stage socialization in which child started liking the or copying the generalized other. And in this situation of all this, you can say stages of socialization, again self of a child develop mostly in generalized other or the game stage socialization stage, when child has to distinguish his behavior from the behavior of other person who are generalized other, and that way the development of self occurs. So, you can basically simply reproduce whatever the existing content you have read about the G.H. Mead in the classroom, and that would be suffice. In detail, we have covered it here. Describe the differing principle of work organization in feudal and capitalist society. So, again straightforward question from the work and economic life. You can simply draw a column in which you will highlight that how the different principle of work organization in a feudal and capitalist society is there. So, you can do what? You can simply start with your introduction that organization of work is actually not driven by the economic compulsion, that it is also having the cultural, societal as well as the kinship family and political organization compulsion for which the social organization of work has been evolved. Right. Now, once social organization of work has been evolved, we have to highlight all these, you can say, differing principle. So, feudal you can write in one column and capitalist you can write in one column and highlight that on the basis of your economic base. So, economic basis per you will have the division. So, in terms of the society which is feudal, it is mostly land centric, it is mostly capital centric, because the name also suggests fief matlab जागीर है ना, मतलब some kind of land ownership is centric. Similarly, when we discuss about the relationship, so again relationship between have and have not in this. So, this is something which is what we have haves and have not relationship, and in case of haves and have not relationship, one can say that here the feudal basically will have also antagonistic cooperation, and here also there is a antagonistic cooperation reflected. Then we have the relationship with the, you can say, labor and capital. Yeah, simply we can highlight that how basically the labor and capital relationship are there. Now, here capital is primarily associated with land ownership in feudal society. So, it is of non-ownership type. It is too of non-ownership type. They are just using it, they are not basically owning it. Lastly, we can say the mobility is comparatively lesser. So, mobility is comparatively lesser here, higher here, and here alienation lesser, higher, and many such basically stuffs were there. Again, that we can basically add on. So, these are the pointers you have to highlight, and you can refer to the booklet for detail. These are the characteristics we have highlighted for capitalist society, and same is for feudal also. Next is how power is different from authority. Discuss various types of power and authority discussed by Max Weber. So, Max Weber has discussed in detail about the power, defining it into two types, legitimate and illegitimate. Weber, however, is more interested to study the legitimate form of power, which he called as legitimate domination and authority. So, what is authority according to Weber? Authority is a legitimate form of domination or power. It is a chance of men or group of men to exercise their will on the basically people who are even against the, who are not even interested or having a resistance against this exercise of will. So, here Max Weber says power is that aspect referred to the possibility of imposing one's will upon the behavior of another person, and that is how he has briefly identified the power also. And again in detail you can refer it from the book, that how he has given different types of authority, that is traditional authority, charismatic authority and legal rational authority. One of the basically straightforward question again. Next question is about our critically examine the role of science and technology in social change. What is your, you can say, opinion on their increasing trend in online education and teaching? So, you can say education and social change is also there, and there is a entire chapter for which we have a science and technology as a social change. So, again when we have to highlight what role science and technology help in social change. So, they are, you can say, initiator of social change, indicator of social change, and also we can safely assume to be integrator of social change. Any social change has been put under the catalyst, and that catalyst is science. So, science is, you can say, going to promote different kind of social change, and science is also responsible for having this kind of discussion possible in the manner where you can all see the basically detailed discussion related to the topic. So, this is about the descriptive element, but when we have to write an answer, we have to be very precise and use the word precisely. So, one can say that science and technology had a great role to play in the, you can say, social change. How? So, it was science only that has brought into the printing press, and that has brought into the religious reform in Europe through the Protestantism, through the humanism and other. Similarly, it was scientific use of controlling nature that has brought into industrialization, that has brought social change in the form of class relationship, that has brought in the form of transport, urbanization and etc. Similarly, it is the science and technology only which is helping in the better means of transport. So now reaching from one place to another is way too easier in comparison to, you can say, other aspects. Also, one can, you can say, highlight the various other contribution of science in the medicine. So, if science would have not interfered in the vaccination process, again all the world would have been for a long term, you can say, lockdown period, where there were no way to come out from it, right? So, these are some of the broader aspect you can interlink with each other. Now, moving on to the next part of the question, ki how science and technology enhances the communication and shifted the economy, that is using more and more AI, and now we are preferring to have the online platform having democratization of the institution and the education has been possible. So, again one can say that how, I will just repeat one more time the question, what is your opinion on their increasing trend in online education and teaching? So, science and technology in education, online education and teaching. Now, how science and technology have a role? So, first and foremost thing one can say that it has democratized the education. So, the learning which was restricted to few geographical centers, for example, some of the islands of, you can say, or ivory towers of learning has now been dismantled with the help of online education. There are now everywhere these education available if they open it for the, you can say, access for the people. So, democratization of education has allowed the diverse population to access the quality resources. Similarly, these kinds of education are having a mode of personalized learning. So, meaning if you are interested, you can learn more on that, and that is going to have your enrichment of the idea. So, it has basically done so. Third is, it has improvised the quality of learning. So, now with the help of a phone and internet, even a child living in a geographically isolated region is now have access to education, and that is something which is science and technology has basically brought into. However, one cannot celebrate because there is a rising digital divide as well. So, there is an increase in the digital divided, and that is something which is one of the problem associated with science and technology, and these are some of the aspects we can be writing. Next question we will be discussing about is going to be underline the role of social media in contemporary social movement and describe the challenges. So, actually it is a new basically social movement in which we have discussed about the idea. So, new social movement in which we have discussed about the role of social media, right? How this new social movement is going to have the role of social media. So, what does it mean? So, social media के कारण, if the question I will repeat it once more time, if social media current, the contemporary social movement and describe its challenges. So, social media is a mobilizer now. It can easily mobilize the large number of people very easily. It is a facilitator. So, social media is used as a basically facilitator to bring the, you can say, information to large number of people. It can be a fine mode of resistance or protest. In fact, entire hashtag #MeToo movement is credited for social media. Entire Arab Spring is actually a basically social media movement, right? Likewise, there is a fundamental transformation in the contemporary social movement where the social media is making it, you can say, cephal या multi-headed movement. There is no need for single head in this. And lastly, we can also say that social media are also basically liberating the organizational, you can say, requirement. Anyone can participate it without being a member of it. And adding to one more point, you can say that in social media you will be finding the way and means forward to put off your voice. So it is voice, offering voice to voiceless also, and giving a, you can say, representation to underrepresented people, right? So this is something which is what we have related to social media. Now, how it is playing a great role in bringing so many things together. So, social media is a representation of new age media repertory for the new social movement. Whenever we have a new form of social movement, whether it is any social movement launched in any part of world, like farmer movements of present time, it liberate a, you can say, movement from ideological compulsion. So ideologically neutral ho jata hai. Ideology do play a role but lesser. In the new social movement, there is a wider audience, meaning it is not catering to one group. So when farmer movement was there, not only one person or farmers participating, but even the people who have nothing to do with farmers are also part and parcel of such movement. So it is trying to incorporate inclusivity. It will take care of wider audience or members from different fields. So these are some of the aspects which are associated with social media. Now again, describe as challenges. Challenges क्या है? It is often misused for misinformation. It is often misused for paid promotion during a social movement. It is often instigate violence. It is often going to create some kind of digital divide. Etc. So all these things are the challenges to handle. Moving on to the next question. There is a next question on the examination. How does multiculturalism, a multicultural society accommodate diversities of all kind, ethnic, linguistic, religious? Discuss its major challenges. So when we talk about a multicultural society, it simply means existence of multiple culture simultaneously together in the same society. Now when we talk about multicultural society, naturally it has multiple ethnic group, it has multiple, as the question demand, linguistic and religious group. Now when we talk about it, how does multicultural society, hold on for a second, just a moment. So when we talk about how does a multicultural society accommodate the diversity of all kind, ethnic and again religious and linguistic, discuss its major challenges, we have to clearly mention about various aspects of multicultural society. So I have to rewrite a multicultural society Now, these kinds of basically social order are going to have existence in the multicultural society. Now, multi matlab more than one, culture matlab way of life. So, when there is a multicultural society, naturally there are multiple ways of life. And India being one of the multicultural society would be considered as a society having a multiple ethnic group, linguistic group and religious group. What is ethnicity? So, ethnicity, as we have mentioned over here also, and in general you might be knowing, is the group which is based on social collectivity of people based on their history, based race, language, culture and their affiliations, various kinds of affiliations. So, again here we have multiple ethnic group. So, within Indian society you have the people who are from the Gorkha ethnic group, who are from the Punjabi ethnic group, from the Kashmiri ethnic group, from the tribal ethnic group, from the basically Dravidian ethnic group. So, it is a hybrid or blending version of race plus the history, language, culture along with your basically affiliations. So, that way we are multi-ethnic society. Multilinguist, India has almost, you can say, multiple languages spoken all over the world. 179 languages and 544 dialects are spoken, and that is also making it multi-linguistic. Almost all major religions followed in India, including Hinduism, Islam, Christianity, basically some element of or some small population of Judaism people also, and Sikh, Jain, Buddhist, Parsi along with Baha'is are also peacefully coexisting in Indian society. Now, what is the major challenges? So, major challenges is conflict because of multiple group of people living together. One such conflict is ethnic conflict, other such conflict is linguistic conflict, and third such conflict is religious conflict. What is the solution? The solution could be highlight as the mosaic model which we followed in Indian society. Mosaic model is based on the notion of unity in diversity. So, it believes that whenever unity in diversity is maintained by promotion of integration, that is going to help in long term sustenance of the society to overcome all the challenges. So, this is what we have to highlight. Next question we have to write is discuss the concept of animism and differentiate it from naturalism. So, animism is again a concept which is given by Edward Tyler, and he believes anima means soul from Latin word. He says that every entity have a soul and that is supposed to be worshipped. So, animism as a concept emerged in the early part of the tribal primitive society, in which they believe that their ancestors are the one whose soul is roaming around and they are responsible for their influence on their day-to-day life. So, they have to worship the ancestral soul in different basically entity, and from there they come up with an idea of animism, right. So, animism is simply a soul worship, and whose soul? Ancestral soul is what worship. Naturalism is a Max Muller concept in which he has highlighted how the primitive people are afraid of nature, and in order to appease that natural forces they started worshipping them in a personified form. So, human form is given to thunder, human form is given to wind, human form is given to water, human form is given to earth, human form is given to various natural forces, and that is something which is what explained here. So, both concepts are there, you can simply get a differentiation. Do modernization and secularization necessarily go together? So, to a certain extent, give your views. To a certain extent, one can agree with this viewpoint that modernization and secularization are the two process. So, if we have to broadly define on the modernization, modernization can be defined in manner of three basically aspects. So, one of the aspect of modernization is value based modernization, other aspect of modernization is institution, and third aspect of modernization is technology based modernization. So, when we say that instead of using the traditional hierarchical values, we are preferring the modern values. So, traditional hierarchical values include inequality, include discrimination. Now, if we use, by liberating all this, if we use the equality which are modern value, fraternity which are modern values, freedom which are modern values. So, this is one of the form of modernization. Institutions, so earlier traditional institutions were there which were based on the traditional values. So, traditional institutions include patriarchy, traditional institution include monarchy. So if you replace them with modern institutions like political parties, modern institutions like bureaucracy, modern institutions like elected government instead of monarchy. So these are institution. Technology. So instead of sending message attaching with pigeon by calling kabutar ja, again you are using the technology. Traditional technology will be expecting the rainfall based on assumption. So if you are using a technology of, you can say, speculation or assumption or primitive in nature, imagination, so that is not a modern. Whether if you are using the modern means of transport, for example internet, telecommunication and all, that is what basically modern technology. So railway, internet. So if you are using a WhatsApp message instead of sending a pigeon, that is, you can say, is modernity. So this is what the modernity is. Secularization is a process when a society in general, and again we have mentioned it here, that Brian Wilson definition, which is the most popular here, that it is a process of religious thinking, practices and institution lose their social significance. So religious thinking, practices and institution losing their religious significance, and this is caused due to secularism becoming a notion in the society. When religious thinking, religious institution and the religious practices are losing their significance. So most of the time whenever we identify why secularization is happening, so one can safely assume that secularization has a major basically driving factor is education. Major driving factor is the reform, major driving factor is the advancement in technology, major driving factor behind secularization is growth of science and technology, major driving factor is the rationality in the modern world, and all these are coming from the modernization. So it would not be wrong to say that both go hand in hand together and they are basically, you can say, necessarily go together. Next is, next question. So this is what description. How do you understand the phenomenon of mushrooming of sect and cult in contemporary society? Discuss the factors responsible for the trend. So which is straightforward syllabus based question from unit 8, religion and society, where there is a detailed discussion of sects and cults. So what is sects? Sects are the splinter group from the religion claiming to be a group based on purity of doctrine, and again sects are based on the values and belief system. Cult on the other hand is revolving around a charismatic personality, and the entire organization consider that this charismatic personality have some supernatural power which attract large number of people toward itself. Right? Then there are other aspects which is basically highlighted in sect and cult also, which is covered under this. So we have one characterization about the sect and cult is basically that sects are claiming to have the monopoly over the truth, meaning whatever they are saying is truth, and sect are not very much in coherence with the various accepted norms. So they are in deviance category. Cult also put themselves into this, but they are believing that they don't have monopoly over the truth, they have the multiplicity over the truth. So these are the straightforward pointers you can write, and discuss the factor responsible for the trend. So various factors which are responsible for the trend of sect and cult to be rising. So one can say that trend of sect and cult to be rising because of Weber conception of theodicy of disprivilege. Then there is a relative deprivation also responsible. Also other factors for the rise in sect and cult could be attributed to the factors, that is basically rapid change happening in the society. Whenever society undergoes some kind of rapid change, we will find there is a rise in cult and sect. Then there is also a rise in the cultural diversification within the society. Then social transition and the role of charismatic leader could also be attributed for the rise in sect and cult. Technological advancement creating a sense of relative deprivation, uncertainty or fear is also cause of sect and cult. Next question we will be writing on that, discuss the dimension of power in the construction and maintenance of social hierarchy in the society. So, dimension of power is discussed in detail by many sociologists, though we will emphasize on Weber, who has still studied it in detail, but various dimension of power in construction and maintenance of social hierarchy in the society, and again we have to bring many other sociologists into it. So, if you ask Marx, Marx will say that it is about the economic dimension of power. Weber talked about the social, political and economic dimension. The feminist talked about the patriarchy as dimension. Then the subaltern perspective highlight the dimension of weaker section in the basically subordinate to power and not the domination to the power. Then there are also the factor highlighted by sociologists who are Indian sociologists, structure functionalists. So, dimension of power as per M.N. Srinivas could be in a rural area, the caste and villages. Ralph Derendorf has focused on the political dimension of power. Gramsci have discussed about the hegemony or influence. So, there are many dimensions of power. One or two of the point you have to take, not everyone, which is basically you can describe or use to describe in your answer. Now, इसी में when we have to write more, again construction and maintenance of social hierarchy in the society. So, how Marx will basically highlight that economic dimension will bring social hierarchy. So, it will create into haves and have not. Weber says about the hierarchy created in the economic order, where 4 classes are defined by Weber: propertied upper class, managerial class or property less white collar worker, the petty bourgeois and the lower manual worker. Then in the you can say political sphere, charismatic authority, traditional and legal relation authority. In social sphere you have life chances and lifestyle. Similarly, feminist says patriarchal will put male above female in the social hierarchy. Subaltern में the stronger sections which be it based on caste, religion or any other thing, and the weaker section. Structure functionalism, upper caste will be at higher location on the social hierarchy. So, construction and maintenance of social hierarchy, these are the factors. But through education, globalization, more and more transformation in the society, this is declining, right? Then modern families have not just become nuclear and neo-nuclear, but also filiocentric. How do you explain? This is a classic explanation related to the transformation of the family, and there is a topic in our system of kinship where we talk about contemporary trends in the changes in the family. So, when we talk about these types of families, some of the types of families include primarily based on the, you can say, the filiocentric. Filiocentric matlab child centric, where child will have a dominant say. So, child centric family is rising, not just nuclear and neo-local. So, neo-local is when married couple don't live with either of their parents and live in a separate house, which is near to both parents. है ना? Nuclear matlab disintegration of joint family into small parts, and one of that is nuclear family. So, not only family is transforming into nuclear and neo-nuclear, but it is also filiocentric. Filiocentric matlab earlier family has 10-15 children in general. So, what usually have is one child would not have much say, because when there are multiple children there is no monopoly that child could enjoy. But today family, due to rise in prices, due to urbanization, due to many other reasons, have 1 or 2 child within a family, and naturally 1 and 2 child will have more attention and also pampering, which is often used by them, sometimes misused by them. So, nowadays children are more dominating, or you can say asserting in the families, and that is why most of the cases of juvenile delinquency is also reflected in present time. So, that Pune case you can bring in that example, where a person who is less than 18 years of age without having any license has got access to the car which he or she cannot get a control over it, and like that many other examples you can quote, which is indicator of the heliocentric transformation toward the society. And how would you explain the trend? Trend is primarily due to multiple reasons. One reason is small family norms, increase in the cost of living. Third is more individualism, due to which the keeping size of the family small is somewhat basically there, and also rise in something called as DINK, double income, no kids. Is it is also one of the reason that whatever kids they have, again even if they have one or two, they will have more emphasis on their basically convenience. So these are the things which we will be writing in our answer. Next question, discuss the various theories of social change, explain the limitation of unilinear theory of social change. So linear theory is, you can call it unilinear theory of social change. So these are the 4 theories of social change which is given in our booklet. Again, sociological theory of social change starting from linear theory of social change. So linear theory of social change says that change occur in a line. So let's say if I have to talk about change A to B to C and it is irreversible. So इसका criticism क्या होगा? Irreversible है, मतलब August Comte has talked about theological society, metaphysical and positivistic society. Then you have talked about the basically Louis Morgan, who has referred about the, you can say, savagery, barbarism and civilization. Likewise many other sociologists have highlighted. Circular theory you can understand is given in terms of various sociologists, like Oswald Spengler has given this theory of decline in civilization based on his 21 study of the 21 civilizational study, how they originate, they grow, they matured and finally they decline. Likewise we can have the pendulum theory of Sorokin, which is basically society changes from sensate to ideational to idealistic form of culture. Then structure functionalism theory highlight about the perspective of, you can say, William Ogburn. So William Ogburn has talked about the cultural lag concept, where culture which is material in nature moves faster than non-material culture. So that is one. And lastly, conflict perspective of social change in detail talked about Karl Marx, Engels and other Marxist scholars. So these theories you have to explain. And limitation of unilinear मतलब इसमें change allow नहीं है. It is unidirectional only. And unlike the, इसके highlight लिख दीजिए नीचे वाली theory के, and that would be a criticism. And this is what you can write in your answer. Last question, that is critically examine world system theory of Immanuel Wallerstein in terms of development and dependency of various nations. So when we discuss about the development dependency topic, again in the unit 10, where we have in detail talked about how the basically colonization has created the dependency in the world, and even after the colonization has ended, imperialism has ended, the dependency still continued. Now American Marxist Immanuel Wallerstein has discussed in detail about this world system theory, where he talked about the 3 kind of categories of the country. One is called as core country, semi-periphery country and periphery country, and how core country, which were earlier the colonizer, continue to maintain their domination by keeping the poor and the former colonies they are dependent, and they will import raw material and labor from them and export them finished products. So this is what in detail you have to highlight. Now we have to give a critical perspective also of this theory. So when we have to give a critical perspective of this theory, now this theory was also highlighted in our test series also, like Immanuel Wallerstein world system theory is also been given in that particular answer, and household dimension of the family is also been covered. So we can simply say that in detail, when we have to highlight about the critical perspective of that theory, again we have to write that often the Wallerstein theory says that there is an exploitation of the poor countries which make them poorer and rich country become richer. However, it is also true that there is a rise of Asian tigers. Asian tiger means rise of exponential growth in Singapore, South Korea, Hong Kong and the Taiwan. It could not be explained. In fact, countries like India, who are former colonies, grow very fast. If dependency would have been absolutely right, countries like India and China, who were formerly poor countries, could not have developed fast. So there were many criticism highlighted to this theory, which is more ideologically centric, based on Marxist idea of haves and have not applied in international, basically you can say, aspects. So these are the criticism we can highlight. So hopefully you have been basically getting some inputs from our discussion what we have made toward the detail of the yesterday conducted sociology mains examination question. Now, you are most welcome to basically receive the model answers also of this particular question from the institutes which we have prepared, and you can collect it from there in a soft copy format if you want. And again, thank you for listening. Have a great day. We will soon come forward with a new discussion on the paper 2 which was recently conducted, and that basically ultimately prove this fact only that sociology is one of the easiest and low hanging fruit in comparison to other optional subject, where you will easily plug this 500 marks spread with your basically logical thinking, analytical skill along with answer writing practice. So thank you everyone for watching. Have a great day. We'll meet soon.